welcome to ThePrint. This is Akanksha Mishra, and I'm sitting here with Mr. Pawan Kumar Chandana, the co-founder and CEO of Skyroot Aerospace, credited with launching India's first private rocket to space. Skyroot also recently became India's first space tech unicorn, valued at over $1 billion. Thank you so much for being with us, Mr. Chandana.
Thanks for having me, Akanksha.
So, Skyroot has a very busy month and very busy year ahead of it. The Vikram-1 launch is scheduled sometime this month, and then subsequently, you have many other launches planned. So, let's get right into it. We all know and we've all been awaiting Vikram-1, but what can you tell us about it? What stage is it in? What is the plan for launch?
Yeah, so when we are yet to announce the launch window. So right now, as we speak, the rocket is at the spaceport, and it's undergoing the integration testing operations there. So it will be for a few weeks, and then we stack up the rocket on the launch pad, and it takes off. So we'll soon announce it. It'll be a few weeks from now.
Okay.
Yeah,
And Vikram-1 will be launching from Sriharikota.
correct.
And what after that? Because we know that Skyroot has been planning its timeline meticulously. Vikram 1 will be the first one that's going to the low Earth orbit.
Yeah.
But there's also Vikram 2. So, can you
Yeah.
tell us for the next 2-3 years, what can we expect from Skyroot?
Yeah, so we'll be doing more Vikram-1 launches. So typically, this will be the first test flight.
Yeah.
So there'll be more test flights. So because building an orbital rocket is extremely complex, and it will require like few flights to iron out all the issues if it may have. And the only way to test a rocket is to fly in the actual environment. So far we are testing on the ground, and then this will be the first test flight. And so we'll have more test flight depending on the data from the first flight. And as we do more flights this year, will be mostly test flights, and then post that we'll start commercial launches of Vikram-1. Though it's a commercial rocket, but the initial flights will be test flights, and then subsequently there'll be like commercial missions. And then Vikram-2 we are targeting probably end of next year, and that only increases the payload capacity or the capacity of the rocket. But until then, Vikram-1 will keep launching.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what can you tell us a little bit about the customers and the payloads that could travel on Vikram 1? Who are the companies that you've been in conversations with, with the test launch as well as the future commercial launches? Who are you expecting Vikram 1 will be catering to?
So Vikram-1 can launch up to 300 kilograms to low Earth orbit. So that is more than 80% of all the satellites which are built globally. And so these satellites have applications like Earth observation, communications, etc., etc. And so they will be mostly global customers. Almost you can say like 70-80% of the market will be global companies who will be launching their satellites through Vikram-1, and across these domains and across regions like US, Europe, Southeast Asia, Japan, various countries.
Okay.
And then the initial launches, because test launches, they may not have like many large commercial payloads, but these will be partially commercial missions. We'll have some customers on them, but most of the commercial launches will be after the initial test flights.
Okay,
Yeah.
understood. Now let's talk about the billion-dollar valuation. It's on everybody's mind that Skyroot managed to achieve it before even launching Vikram 1. So that definitely shows the confidence of investors in you and in your growth. But does that give you more confidence, or does that also add to the pressure before the Vikram 1 launch?
Yeah, so we typically don't take the valuations, etc., to the mind, because these are like fleeting temporary numbers, So, but it's good. But like you mentioned, it gives a really it gives an indication that investor confidence is high in the sector and high in Skyroot, which is a good thing, where you can raise more capital to build the company, and then so that's how we raised the last round of capital. And if you see, in fact, it's a very long-term journey. Building a space company takes few decades to build, and we're in the very initial phases and getting into commercialization this year, next year. So it's going to be a pretty long journey, but it's an important step, important milestone for Vikram-1, and also it's of high value because very few companies in the world are able to get to a launch which can go to orbit. We have done Vikram-S launch 3.5 years ago that proved the technology stack to good extent. And then now we are Vikram-1 is at the launch site. There's very few companies in the world are ready to take off an orbital rocket. And globally, very few companies are operating orbital rocket because of complexity, and it's like a different business potential which can be unlocked once we do it. So that shows the market potential of this if we succeed really well, which we are attempting to do in the coming missions.
That's true. And you did speak about how you're right. It is very difficult to go from, from a startup to finally your
Yeah,
launch, which is happening this month. So, can you tell us about your journey? You were one of India's first space tech startups. Now we have over 300.
yeah.
What has it been like in the Indian ecosystem to develop a space technology startup along with ISRO, without it?
Yeah, no, has been incredibly challenging because it's a new path not taken before. It's like we're learning a lot of things on the go because, for example, we don't have talent specifically trained in the space sector. So we had to build a lot of talent, which has been like one of the very very big challenges for us. And but there are a lot of great benefits because the ecosystem in India exists thanks to ISRO. Over 60 years of ecosystem exists. For example, we have the Vikram-1 has almost 400 suppliers, all from India, which is like shows a very strong supply chain ecosystem already built in India. We have a lot of test facilities, launch facilities, everything already available in India, which we are making use of today. So a lot of ecosystem exists, and a lot of ecosystem needs to be built, which we are doing, especially in the private sector, whatever is not available, and that has been a big challenge. And also raising capital is also a big challenge because the first time like you mentioned as well, right? So even before the Vikram launch, we had to raise capital, a lot of capital, and then also and then it also shows that this is a very unique sector where you need more capital to even start commercial operations. There has also been a new journey for a startup in India, and also in very deep tech, hard tech, which many investors are first time for them to invest in. Right, so that also has been a challenge, and the policy also initially has been a challenge. But the government, until the government has opened up the sector to private players a few years ago, so I think all these challenges have been navigated now, and ready to take off soon. And so the launch is, I mean, like I mentioned, like is yet to be the window is yet to be announced, and then it may or may not, it may be like in the coming weeks, but we'll be announcing soon.
Okay, understood. But since we are discussing launches and since
Yeah,
we are discussing, going commercial, because at this space globally, the space ecosystem is expanding widely. It's
correct.
also, I mean, you look at SpaceX, you look at the
Yeah,
US, and you also see a lot of Indian companies,
yeah,
going to SpaceX for
yeah,
their launches. So
yeah,
everybody is expanding fast.
yeah,
Keeping that in mind, keeping this, the pace of this sector,
yeah.
what is Skyroot's plan for commercial sustainable launch cadence? When do
Yeah.
you plan to achieve that?
No, in the next 2 years, we should get to good, sustainable, commercial launches. And that is also a very big challenge. One challenge is to actually get to the first launch,
Yeah.
lift off. Next challenge is actually to have consistent successes. And next challenge is actually to get to production rate and to consistently, sustainably launch the
Yeah.
vehicles for the customers. So I think this is a multi-step process. So we're just starting the first step now, and then will be a very interesting journey going forward because very few companies in the globe has this capability, and also it's a great capability for the country as well, where like it increases the domestic capacity
Yeah.
as a country in India, where you can have more access to space than before. Right, so I think this all adds up to it, and globally, it's end of the day, it's a global market, and a good portion, like I mentioned, 70 to 80% of the market comes from global, customers, and it is also good for the entire space sector because you have more access to space.
Yeah. But do you have a number in mind of how many launches a day or a month would you want to be doing, ideally?
Yeah, it's difficult to say now. Probably let's get to the first, three launches and see how it goes. Then probably, then that also will establish the production. For example, the Infinity Campus, our facility which was inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister last year in November. So that has a capacity to build one orbital rocket every month. So we have to, we're yet to hit that cadence, but the moment we hit that cadence, we can actually be able to build one rocket a month. and then we have to see how many we can launch depending on the constraints, and then still we can ramp up beyond that as well. So yeah, so
That's
that's how
true.
it is.
But also speaking of launch cadence from India,
Yeah.
we do have to keep in mind that say for this year, ISRO has the half of the year is over, and ISRO has had one launch which was not entirely successful. Keeping that in mind, and given the growing demand for launchers,
Yeah.
from startups, from private companies, multiple payloads, do you think Skyroot is coming in at the right time for the Indian private space sector, which needs launches?
Yeah, no, no. I think not only India, the entire globe needs more launches. There are very less launches, and more requirement keeps piling up every year. So I think it's good both for India and globally. And then, as I mentioned, like a good portion of our market is a major portion of our market is global as well, and the domestic demand is also rising right now. And so India actually needs to increase the launch cadence right now. So this is also a great benefit for the country, and hopefully, like we'll contribute to that. And ISRO is also doing its best efforts to increase its launch cadence. So as a country, together both ISRO and the private sector, they're also working together. For example, we are very closely working with ISRO for the launches, right? So it's as a space ecosystem together, we can have like more launches and more access to space.
That's true. Moving on, when we look at the other private space companies, I mean,
Yeah.
Skyroot right now, we can say that Skyroot did have a first mover advantage,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of others that are coming in right now.
Yeah.
There's Take Me to Space, there's also the older ones, there's Agnikul and
Yeah.
Dhruva. How do you look at your relationship with these other companies? Do you look at it as competition? Do you look at it as collaboration? Do you look at it as a together you're building India's ecosystem?
So definitely you are building India's ecosystem today, and you need like companies across fields. We need companies doing launch vehicles or rockets. We need companies doing satellites. We need companies doing various types of satellites, right? So it's all building ecosystem together. There are, I think, over 400 startups, but some of them have graduated from prototype stage to getting to commercialization, and many of them are in the early phase who are like building their first prototypes and getting into the market. So it's a very thriving, and all this activity happened in the last 3 to 4 years, which is phenomenal, for India. And we are always consistently, finding ways to work with each other. For example, we have an MOUs with at least 3, 4 startups in India where we can actually complementary solutions where we bring together. For example, we can collaborate with every satellite companies, for launch,
Yeah.
for example, right? So these are the collaboration talks which are continuously in the ecosystem, so that together companies can come up with even a more unique and special solution for the global market.
That's true. There is a number floating around about the valuation of India's space economy by 2030. I think
Okay.
it's $44 billion. Do you think that that is achievable, or do you think that it'll be lower or higher than that?
Yeah, so basically ambition set by the government is to hit $44 billion by 2033, I think. And so that is definitely ambitious and aspirational, but it is doable. If few, in fact, it highly depends on the startups, how they scale, so, and also highly depends on how the even the domestic market evolves, how the global market evolves. So it's a multi, it depends on a lot of factors. And so that's the reason why it's an aspirational target to go after. It requires like very large companies being built out of India which can go global, and hopefully that we should see some of them in the coming years. Hopefully, like Skyroot will be one of the key people emerging out of India in the global scale. And at that pace, with more companies coming up and markets opening up, it is I think should be possible to achieve there. But I think we have to see how it pans out in the coming years.
So, when we look at the growing demand in the Indian space, we also have to look at facts like launch failures, which are a given in the space sector, but they can also be huge setbacks for both the private sector and the public sector. So, for example, ISRO's PSLV failure earlier this year. When Skyroot looks at something like that, do you learn from it? What are some of the lessons that you take from launch failures in India and globally?
Yeah, I think, see, rocket industry is a very complex industry, and failures are actually progress. For example, when a rocket fails, you get to learn things about it to make it better. and that's the only way, so if you see any rocket development program across the world, including SpaceX, for example. SpaceX is the largest global space company, and their first 3 launches failed in a row, and now like they're the largest company with the largest number of launches ever done in history. So it's a learning phase, and then in fact they had a lot of failures in between as well. Right, so it's a journey of developing and building a rocket in the industry. So it's a fairly accepted thing in the industry, and also I would say like it's a progress going forward. And that way I think even PSLV was a setback, and but still I think I'm sure like it has a huge heritage, and it'll bounce back very soon for sure. And that way, but the only thing is that these failures help give a lot of learnings for us as well, because we get more cautious. We see that the same mistake, whatever it may be, would not be repeated, right? Except we get we do some extra checks to ensure that we don't where does the gaps, if any. So that way I think failure helps the entire industry move forward. And of course, whatever even PSLV failure, I'm sure they're going to get back very soon.
Makes sense. Now, you have often spoken about how to make space more accessible and more affordable,
Yeah.
For the world, for India. In practical terms, what is something that you think Skyroot can do by 2030 that just ISRO alone could not have done, or like just the public sector could not have done for India?
No, I mean, it's difficult to compare at this phase, but what we will do is that, so because we are a private company, right? So our core goal is to push the limits of what business potential we can unlock in the space sector. So we will be definitely aggressive in how many launches we can do, and we hope like we will get to a cadence where we'll compete with the best in the world. And so that way I think that'll give both access, because the global play anyway, right? So it'll help us do more launches for the global space sector. And ISRO, like I mentioned, ISRO also plans to increase a cadence, because you need a lot of domestic requirements as well, and there is like a lot of access space requirement as well. So I think both will push boundaries as much as we can.
Now, just one final question to end this interview on. In 5 years, what headline about Skyroot Aerospace would make you feel that you have succeeded?
So Skyroot enters the league of top few global space companies, which has created a significant impact in launch, and also on the overall space economy, is I think something would be very exciting.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's perfect. And that's a great note to end the interview on. Thank you so much, Mr. Chandana,
Thank you.
and all the best with the Vikram-1 launcher. We are all waiting.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.